All right, you have made it to week number 3. And so during this week, we are going to wrap up Module 1 and then we're going to move forward into Module 2. So hang on tight. Module 1 is going to wrap up with Chapter 6. So let's read Chapter 6. It's on nonverbal communication. We're going to talk about how nonverbal communication is really powerful in displaying emotions in our communication. And then we're also going to look at the functions of nonverbal communication. We're going to study the 8 types of nonverbal behaviors. And so these nonverbal behaviors are going to be the focus of our Module 1 discussion board. So as you're learning about these nonverbal types, think through examples of how you display those nonverbal types in your own communication, and be prepared to share those on the discussion board. And then there will be a couple of questions as well. Don't forget that you'll have to include an image on the discussion board for Module 1, and then you'll also want to engage in your classmates and reply to what they have posted. Make sure that those replies are not simple agreements and acknowledgments, but actually moving the conversation forward so that you can learn socially collaboratively from each other. I'll be popping in on the discussion board a little bit, but I try to maintain some distance because this is your opportunity to learn from each other. I'll give personal feedback as I score the discussion board so that you have that. And then of course, you will finish up reading Chapter 6. The chapter ends practically with a lot of tips to enhance your nonverbal communication. And then you want to take that Chapter 6 quiz. All of our chapters have accompanying quizzes in the eLearn module. So make sure that you find those, take those. Then, of course, you're ready to complete that discussion board if you haven't already. And then to wrap up Module 1, you'll do the Module 1 exercise. So this exercise throws us all the way back to Chapter 2 when we studied culture. And I referenced this exercise. This is the Hofstede Cultural Comparison Tool. You'll be able to pick another country and compare that country to the United States. Try to pick a country that you're very interested in learning more about. Maybe this is a country that you want to put on your bucket list to go visit. Maybe you have a trip upcoming. And so learning more about the differences and similarities in their communication can really enhance your visit or just your interest. So then you'll complete that cultural comparison tool, fill out the information on the document, and throw that in the Dropbox to wrap up Module 1. Now we move forward into Module 2. We're going to start with Chapters 7 and 8 this week. Chapter 7 is on listening. You're going to start by looking at 6 listening myths. And so see if you've heard any of these before. Maybe you believe some of them. Maybe you still believe them and you disagree with what the textbook presents. And so just engage in this introduction to the chapter. Then you'll look at the process for listening, and we follow the Hurrier model. And so you'll study each of the steps in the listening process. We'll look at why and how we listen, and look at 6 non-listening behaviors. These non-listening behaviors can stop the flow of dialogic communication. So pay close attention. This will also be a future topic of discussion for us later. And then of course, the chapter wraps up with practical tips to enhance your listening. So enjoy Chapter 7 on listening, and then take that Chapter 7 quiz. Move right into Chapter 8 on relationship communication. What a great chapter. We all are in relationships. We are community creatures. And so this chapter really helps talk about why we are in relationships and what needs are met in relationship. We look at the stages of relationships. I would encourage you to think about a relationship that you are in when you read this section, and try to identify the different stages of the relationship development and possibly the relationship deterioration. And then, of course, there is a section on relationship maintenance, and the chapter ends with some practical tips. So think about your relationships, your past relationships, perhaps present relationships, and even future relationships as you read through this chapter. Remember, this chapter can be applied not just to intimate relationships. I just celebrated my 20th wedding anniversary, so I'm very familiar with the struggle and the work that goes into an intimate relationship, but also think about family relationships, maybe with parents, possibly with children, maybe siblings. We have fun discussing the relationships with siblings for sure. But then we also have communal relationships, perhaps at work. that can be navigated and improved, the communication piece of, and maybe even just in our society as we have relationships in our society as well. So enjoy chapter 8, and then I'll see you next week.